everyone, welcome to Watercolor Wednesday. I am Bonnie Krebs, creator of Watercolor the Art Impressions Way, and this week's project is another really simple one. I'm going to show you how to create this little hillside and put these little structures on it. So in this example, I've used the same structure for all of these little houses, but you could easily switch that out and use different ones if you want to. But I want to show you that you can use the same stamp and actually switch it up a little bit. Changing the color really changes that image, and you can use the same stamp and get a totally different look. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create this little hillside, put some little water in, and super easy. And actually, this only takes 5 stamps, which I also love about it. So sometimes it's fun to use a bunch of stamps. Sometimes it's fun to try to make them really simple and just kind of use what you have. So we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a little structure. So we're going to use this one right here from the mini cottages set. In the branches set, we're going to use this one right here. And then in the garden, the wagon mini set, we're going to use this one. And then in the foliage set, we're going to use this small foliage right here for the background, and then we're going to use the small little grass. So those two, and that is all we're going to need. So let's go ahead and get started. And you can see on this this sample, this image is very soft and it almost has kind of a dreamlike look. So there's not a lot of detail here. So we don't want to stamp these in very dark lines. So we want to keep this really simple. So we're going to ink these little cottages, and then we're going to stamp them off so that we get a really thin, light line. So the first thing we're going to do is ink up this little cottage, and I'm just going to use the sepia and just kind of ink the whole thing up here. And I'm going to take off these bottom lines. So I don't want to see the bottom of the little house. We're kind of growing wildflowers and foliage all around it, so we don't want to see the bottom of the house. So now I'm going to take that and I'm just going to stamp it off one time, just to make sure that I don't have it too dark on here. And then about the middle of the page, I'm going to stamp it on my watercolor paper. So just like that, that's about right. And I've cut a mask, so I'm going to cover this now and then stamp in my other image right next to it. And actually I'm going to go down a little bit lower than this one. So let's ink it again. And take off those bottom lines. And then we're going to stamp it off again. And we're going to stamp it just a little bit lower. So overlap it a little bit and stamp it right about there. Okay, that looks good. And let's do one more. Ink it up again. Take off those bottom lines. Stamp it off. And this time we're going to do it up above. So just like that. That looks pretty good. That is about exactly where we want to have those. And we are ready to move on now to the next step. Okay, so that would be to pull the color out of the lines. So dip your brush in water and just begin to pull this out. So these lines are going to be very, very light and soft, and that's exactly what we want. You know, when you're looking out in the distance, you're not going to see something that's completely outlined with a dark line. So that's kind of what we're going for here. We want this really soft look. So just kind of go around all these little lines. We can do more of this later. So for right now, this is just the starting point. Okay, that looks pretty good. We are about ready to go on to the next step. So let's go ahead and add some color now to these little cottages. And I'm going with a light color. So this is a number 17, steel blue. This is a number 30, rosewood. And then I'm going to mix a kind of a dusty rose color. So this is magenta, number 20. And I'm going to mix it with the sepia. And when you mix these two colors together, you get a really nice kind of a dusty rose color. So sort of an antique pink is actually what it is. And we want to go really, really light on this color. So we're just doing this soft, very soft pastel look on these houses. So just begin to brush it in just like this. Super easy. Don't overthink it. I know I say that a lot, but honestly, when people look at these little compositions, they're looking at it as a whole. They're not looking at one specific area. They kind of want to just get the feel of it. And that's what we're going for. So just a little bit of this color in here. And then let's go with this tan. And just brush a little of this in. Just super easy. And let's go a little darker under the eaves. And a little darker on this one as well. Okay, so let's take some blue now. So this is the steel blue. And actually let's take the fine tip and really color in these little window areas. So we're just creating a little detail here. And just use your fine tip. And just brush this in. Super easy. Don't overthink it. Okay, we're getting our little structures in here. So let's add some roof color now, and let's go with light. Let's continue on with this light, very pastel look, and let's color in these roofs. So remember, when you're doing rooftops, make sure you don't color all the way to the top. You want to see that highlight. You want to see that highlight in there. So I changed up this roof color a little bit because I have the house that's this tan. So I just mixed a little sepia with it. Easy to do. And add a little darker color to the chimneys here. And you can see our little houses are starting to come together. You can always add more color later too. Don't be afraid to add a mix of color. You know, nothing is ever a single color when you're looking at it out in the distance. Okay, we can go back to these in a little bit, but let's go ahead and do the next step, and that's to add our foliage in. So we're going to use this small little foliage, and I placed it on here upside down. So there's two sides to this little foliage. This has a little more detail on this side. So we're gonna kind of use a little more detail when we're brushing this in back here. So we're gonna stamp this in, but I wanna do one thing first. I wanna put some sky in here in the background. So I'm gonna do that with the number 17. And really, really water this down when you're brushing sky in. And I want to kind of stamp those trees and that foliage in over the sky. So I'm just going to brush this in first. Don't stress out about this. Just get it brushed in. Super easy. Okay, that looks pretty good. And as soon as that's dry, we'll go in with our foliage. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to use this side. This has a little more detail to it. So we're going to use this, but we're not going to use the whole stamp. We're just going to use the side of it, so just the edge. Make sure that's dry. And it is. And I'm going to use the number 15 olive green. And I'm just going to ink a small section of this and just kind of tap it in. So just like that. You could turn it a little bit. And just kind of tap it in all around these little cottages. And then we're going to go back in with water and we're just going to kind of blend it out. Just blend it out. It's going to be really soft. And just kind of work your way across. Super easy. Nothing to it. And I love how this just creates this subtle look of foliage in the background. So we've got these little cottages that are kind of overgrown with foliage in the background. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in our little wildflowers. We're gonna let this dry a little bit, and then I think I'm gonna come back in with a little more of this texture and add some more foliage in the background. But let's let that dry for a little bit and go on to our little flowers. So we're gonna use the number 43. So this is Brilliant Yellow. And we're just gonna kind of start working our way down the hill here. And I'm stamping this kind of in a circle. And just, you know, work your way down. Separate little sections. So you can see these little wildflowers are growing all over the hillside. And you want to be sure that you're stamping it over and over again, because that's how you get this three-dimensional look. When we add water to this now, you know, those dark first impressions are going to come forward and then the light ones are going to fade back. And so we're going to get this, you know, idea of this three-dimensional image. So important that you're stamping that over and over again a bunch of times, just a bunch of times. So let's go in here with a little darker color. This is an orange, so this is actually butterscotch, but you can use any orange. And just put a few more of these in, just to kind of anchor this down a little bit. This Brilliant Yellow is pretty light, and so we want to get a little mix of color in here. So let's go ahead and add water now to this and just blend. So remember, just dab. So no brush strokes, you're not painting anything. You're just touching all of these little areas. Use the side of your brush. Your hand is flat on the table, and just kind of jump your brush all around. You know, the stamps kind of do their thing. So if you stamp it and you stamp in a repeat like that a bunch of times, it's just going to kind of do its thing. It's going to be a three-dimensional image as soon as you add the water to it. It just works. It's kind of like magic. Love that about it. Okay, so let's add some green in here now. We've got a huge sea of yellow, so we kind of want to anchor it down a little bit and add some foliage in here. So that's really easy to do. And just pick up a little of this green with your brush and just put a little bit of it in here and there. Just kind of brush it in. Don't stress out about it. Just put a few little dabs here and there, just to kind of anchor it down. And you can use the other green too. You can mix your greens up and add some color from the number 72 as well. So you can tap in a little bit of this green too. Just super soft and much more abstract looking. And just kind of work your way around. You can see it's kind of making it a little more three-dimensional, kind of anchoring it down a little bit so we don't have so much light color. And just putting a little more color now on these little structures, especially over this overhang here. And this under here, this would be really dark. Okay, so let's go back in here and just tap in a little more of this foliage. Let's turn this around and use this side now. And let's just tap in a little more. And a little bit more over here. And the more you blend, you know, the softer that it's going to get. We're just creating this really, really soft watercolor image. And I think I'll just put a little more color on those roofs. That was the number 30 again. The more layers, the darker it's going to get. So you can always go back over it again. Just putting a little darker line under here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's put some trees now in the background. So we're going to do that with this branch, this little branch. So I'm just going to color just parts of it. So kind of this middle section a little bit, and maybe stamp some in here. And I'll do that again over here and maybe here. And get a few in the background. You can also come back in here now with your brush and you can soften those. So you can add a few little, some little foliage to it in the background, or you can leave them, up to you. But it just kind of adds a little more detail in the background. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring in our water now. And I'm going to do that with number 86. So I'm just putting a little of this color onto my palette, and I'm going to really, really water this down so it's pretty light. It's always better to start out with things, you know, that are lighter, because you can always add more color to it. So we're going to come in here, instead of a straight line across here, we're just going to kind of come in and, you know, move this around a little bit so that it looks like that little stream is kind of meandering around these hills. And then just brush in a little more color. I'll leave some, you know, some white spaces. So that you don't have everything colored in exactly the same. And then let's bring some foreground in. So we're going to do that with our green. And we're going to take this now and kind of come down. And just brush it in. Remember, it's just the idea of things, so don't stress out too much about this. This is, you know, meant to be really relaxing and fun, and it really is. It really is. Don't get too caught up in the details of things, you know, and stressing out about the details, because people are looking at this as a full composition. They're not looking at one single little flower that maybe you didn't quite stamp correctly. So let's take some of this now from this little hillside, and let's put some reflection into the water. And that's really easy to do. So we're just kind of duplicating, so we're mirroring this image, and we're just putting a little of this color into the water, just with your brush. This is really fun to do. And then let's take a little green and also put that in. And don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. It's just the idea. Remember, it's just the idea. And then let's go ahead and add some some grasses to the foreground. So So this is the little grass stamp, and we're just kind of walking it across the front. This is in the foreground now, so we'd be able to see these little blades of grass. And just the idea of it. And then just add some water, pull that color out. And that looks pretty good. I'm just going to blend some of this color out now to the side. You want to kind of always think about your composition in a circle or in an oval so that things don't, stretch out too far. You don't have your sky kind of going off the page or your foliage going off the page, and then you don't know where the rest of the image is. So just kind of dragging this out. Make sure that I have a good area. Okay, so now let's come back in and make sure that we have everything done on these little structures. So I'm adding just a little more color now to the roof over here and then back in here. That looks good. A little more detail. I use my fine tip so much. This is the fine tip of the sepia now, and you can see that it just kind of puts lines back in that maybe you might be missing. And I go back a lot and just add a few more details. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. We're ready to sign and date. Try this little project. It's really, really fun. And then try it with some different little structures. This is the same one, but like I said, you can mix it up and use all kinds of different little structures. Try it with a little road in front. That would also be really fun and cute. So sky's the limit. You guys use your imagination and see what you come up with. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and I will see you all next week.